Think of a time when you experienced a conversation that left you with a new perspective, or perhaps an inquiry, or you might have felt that something has shifted in you after that conversation. Maybe it helped you gain a new level of clarity, or moved you to take action. That was a coaching conversation. Hello and welcome to the Coaching Conversation. This is your host Salah Al-Laythi. I am really excited to have with me today Brandon Rains. Brandon is a coach, trainer, certified Scrum coach, and a friend. And I'm really happy for him to be here. Brandon, welcome.
Thank you very much, Salah. Man, it's a great honor. It's always fun to talk to you. So even in this format, it's cool.
Same here. We connected recently, and we spoke about different topics. I wish we recorded that
Right.
conversation. But
Yeah.
good ideas and insights come when you're not recording. But and then you're like, okay, what was good insights that we took away? Hopefully, this will emerge. So I want to just get started by your journey. What's your story? What inspired you to this type of work?
So I really started off as a software developer, software engineer some time ago. And I mean, I was one of those kids who just always loved computers. And so I studied computer science. I got out of school, and that was probably the first 10 plus of my career is heads down writing code on teams, out of teams by myself, in basements, garages with other buddies, that kind of thing after work. And what I found in my client experiences when I went, into four walls, into some cave with, at a client, is that the experience wasn't always so great, whether it was just working long hours and not producing stuff that I was particularly proud of, or the team was proud of, or my customers were proud of. And so I'm like, it's got to be a better way. And luckily, I had a couple of really good friends and mentors who, at this time, this was like the early 2000s, who were talking to me about extreme programming. And it was one of those down in the basement experiences where, everybody was doing websites and B2B sites and things like that in our off days, dreaming of making millions. And we were using extreme programming during that time. And it was great. It was fun. We were pair programming. We were doing things in short iterations. We were talking with each other all the time, figuring out how can we do it better. I'm like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can I make my after hours experience the same as my, 9 to 5 experience? And so at least on one program, after we had failed miserably, and I can remember, like, we literally were there for 24 hours. And then at the end of that 24 hours, what we produced wasn't cool. And so we were in a position where, like, well, we tried everything, can't make it worse. So
Yeah.
I remember having conversations with the program manager and saying, hey, let's give this agile stuff a try. And she said the same thing. She was like, can't make it worse. And I remember talking to the customer at the time and saying, hey, I know that really sucked, that last delivery, but could we try something different? How about every couple of weeks we talk with you, we figure out what's the most important thing, and at the end of that we show it to you and we go from there. And he said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And that's what we did. And so that worked. That program turned around, and then some years later somebody came to me and said, hey, that worked really well, and I've been hearing other things about agility. Would you want to coach some other teams? And I very quickly said, absolutely not. I'm a developer. I'm not doing that coaching stuff. And then eventually I said yes. And so that was, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I've been coaching.
It's interesting how there's a theme or pattern. Everyone I spoke to on this podcast and even off the podcast there's this idea of getting better, finding how can we get better, or there's a pressing problem that we're trying to solve. That's how we stumble on things that we want to try and see if it gets better. And so that's that's a good segue to the. I know when we spoke last time, you said you were working on more getting more into professional coaching, and you've gone through this journey of the professional coaching through ORSC, or the organizational relationship systems coaching. How did you come across that? Like what led you to that?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a good segue because the consistent thread is getting better. And it's like at some point I started to see that the agile practices and principles are fantastic and lovely, right? But at some point you start to see relationships and how people work with each other. That's like the next level. And I didn't have as many skills as I wanted to have to navigate those kind of waters. And more of the coaches that I were hanging around were starting to talk about this professional coaching stuff. And I became curious. And so I looked into it, and I'm happy that I did. And I went to one of the first classes, the fundamentals class, which kind of gives you just like a peanut butter spread of a lot of the different skills and the concepts. And it just kind of hit me like, wow, this is really cool. And I can see how this would be really, really helpful. I still struggle with completely how to meld all of those different worlds, but I at least had a glimmer of this is like a missing thing that would be really, really helpful as I work with teams.
I think that's one of the biggest opportunities that I see with teams. I know there is a focus also on technology and technical practices, which is not to say that they're less important, but the idea of working together as a team has a lot more to do with how people interact and work with each other and the relationships involved than what technology we're using. I think the technology comes second. What have you discovered in this journey?
Well, I think just like another note on that, right? We often say, like, you can go to a class. Oftentimes, there's plenty of classes to learn a particular technology, and you can get really good at it. But it's not a whole lot of classes or schools that we go to learn how to work with each other. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what it's been. It's been just having the conversation around upfront. How do we want to work with each other? What's the kind of environment that we want to play in when we are together, just in an aspirational sense? And then acknowledging that there will be conflict, and conflict can come in different forms. And that's okay. We're human beings. We're bound to happen. And there's some creative tension that happens and beautiful stuff that comes out of that creative tension. But how do we want to work with each other when it happens so that it becomes productive as opposed to destructive?
Exactly. I remember when we spoke in the past, we were trying to compare notes between, you went on the journey with ORISC. I went on the journey with coactive coaching. And I think I started in the same place where I just wanted to test the waters or explore what is this thing about, and I went and I attended the coactive fundamentals, which was their first course. And then I attended the ORSC fundamentals. And then I tried to see, okay, where do I feel I'm drawn to, or like, at least where do I want to start? A lot of people who I talk to, sometimes they ask me like, which one should I start with? And I mean, I think it's a matter of preference, but it's also like you said, like, as you started the conversation, maybe there was a pressing problem that you were trying to solve. For me, I wanted to get more exposed to one-on-one coaching conversation and coaching individuals and leaders. And the ORSC was also with the teams and groups and couples, even. It was very inspiring and tempting to go that path, but I put a constraint for myself. If I only choose one path, which one would it be? And then I picked coactive. It was more in line with what I wanted to do then. But what about you? How did you decide that this is the path you wanted to take?
Yeah, it's really funny. Like we talked about it last time. It's like the tale of two coaching brothers, right? Just went down different paths, but had really awesome experiences. Yeah, I mean, just like you, right? I actually took the coactive fundamentals class first, and then took the ORSC fundamentals second, and had awesome experiences with both. And what it came down to is I thought, well, at least at that time, I was spending a lot more of my time working with groups, with teams, whether or not that's leadership teams or development teams or anywhere in between. And so I just decided, just to go down that route. So yeah, it just became of where was I spending more of my time? And quite honestly, there was a point in time where I thought, I would go back and do the coactive track. I just didn't. I just decided to go all the way through the ORSC courses, and then eventually I did their certification program, and so I just wrapped that up.
Congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment. Like, people don't realize how long and rigorous this process is. It is not your typical CSM class.
It is not.
but yeah, can you say more about your experience? How did you experience the whole process?
So thank you. It's pretty rigorous, and I found it to be an incredibly wonderful human experience. So there's ORSC from CRR Global. There are 5 classes that you take. Each of the classes are like 2 or 2.5 days, and they put you in. You typically will take the classes with almost the same amount of people, because people level will take them consecutively. My journey was a little bit different. I did one or two, and then I paused and did a couple more. So I almost had like 2 or 3 cohorts through my classes. And then I practiced. I actually didn't go immediately into certification, which is a year-long process. I had about at least a year pause between the classes and then the certification process. And then the certification process, like I said, it's a year, and you are in a cohort of about 15 people or so, led by a main instructor. And then you have other leaders that come in and give you supervision. And I found it was great. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a ton about how to be a better coach. I learned a ton about being just a better human to be with other human beings. And it was the cohort that I was part of. They were really special people, and we're all friends and continue to be friends and still stay in contact with each other and help each other. And the supervisors that I had it was one of those really cool experiences where they really wanted you to be successful and they wanted you to grow and be better. And it was one of the better programs that I've ever been involved with.
I had very similar experience with Coactive. I mean, even like you said, I didn't sign up for the whole series at one go. I tippy-toed into the first course, and then I decided, okay, let's. I had to pause because I couldn't find time to attend the second course, and so I ended up taking one course with a different group in New York at the time, and then the rest of the courses I took in DC and Virginia area, and just stayed with the same cohort. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience. It was great to, like you said, exactly to know about yourself. It's funny that one of the biggest differences I found in this journey is that you can't take your client or your team where you're not willing to go, and so in order for you to coach others, you have to do a lot of work on yourself.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So yeah, you learn to be a better coach, a better human being, and just in general, and how to interact with people using the coaching skills that you've learned or acquired during the program.
Yeah, it's so true. God, it's so funny. The more and more we talk with each other about our experiences, how much they parallel each other. I found it shocking sometimes. I mean, like having some outer body experiences where it's like, wow, this is really different. This is really allowing me to delve into different places. Because like you said, people experience some strange things. We're in agility, we're asking them to do a lot of things that are very different, very uncomfortable, not natural for them. And I think being able to recognize that and be empathetic about that and being able to help them through that in a healthy way, and using some of these skills that we've learned through these coaching classes and coaching experiences, it's helped. It's helped a lot. It's helped me to have different kinds of conversations to allow people to think more for themselves about how they want to be more effective in these kind of transformations, how they want to work with their teams in a different way, such that they can live up and be better teams, and to be more productive in the thing that they're building.
It's interesting to see how these skills have been instrumental in just becoming a better coach and helping teams as agile coaches. I know many of people I spoke to, they started becoming aware or familiar with professional coaching through the work of Lisa Atkins and Michael Spade and their work. And then I remember that I got hooked on this idea of professional coaching or coaching by the questions, the curiosity aspect of to be present and curious with the person or the team that you're working with, and not to try to force a solution or a way of doing something. Not to say that you might be, as a consultant, you may step into consulting and offer your experience. That's why they bring you in as a consultant and / coach, but you have to be aware of where are you coming from. So that's what was my first hook, is this idea of like powerful questions and listening. And then when I started to pick up some other skills around coaching, things that I wasn't aware of. I mean, I could sense it intuitively, like acknowledging what's happening, or like you said, witnessing, be there for them to sit in the in discomfort of not knowing things. It's not easy to do that, because when we shift between the consulting and coaching, we want to come up with the answer and offer it because we've been there, we know, or we think we know, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that is probably always will be something that I will continue to struggle with, particularly for me, is being with my engineering roots, right? I'm, bred to be problem solver, right? And there's an answer and I will figure it out. And so being able to kind of shift that when I'm with clients is always something that, I know is there and I know I need to work with. And so that was another one of the really cool things of being able to acknowledge that for myself and being able to acknowledge how that shows up in my coaching experience and allowing, the client to bring their solution and then work with that. And like you said, right, it's always this dance of when the consultant needs to be there and show up and when does the coach need to be there and show up. And so I know I lean a lot more into coaching when it comes to team dynamics, team relationship kind of things. And the consultant kind of fades away. And then when it's like, okay, how do you write a user story? And it's like, okay, consultant can show up there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it gives you range, expand your toolkit, if you will. And so what's a skill that you picked up that you now really thought this can really help me as an agile coach or with teams in general?
I think it's this concept of aligning and being able to distinguish aligning from having to agree with every single detail. And so I think a lot that shows up so much working with teams because, you put a lot of smart people in a room and there's so many things to agree or disagree on. And you kind of really lose the focus of what's the big goal that we're after that we can all align to. And just being able to bring that to the table with clients, I think it's been a really big deal for me and for clients to be able to distinguish between those things and be able to get to alignment faster and then start iterating on things and really get into that agile group.
That's a common problem. Agreeing with someone seems to be binary, like you either agree or disagree, right? Versus, alignment, we have a goal. We all can support it or at least live with that goal. And like you said, to be able to move forward, we all can come back to that goal and figure out like, okay, how do we accomplish it? Maybe there are some different ideas, but we're aligned on what that goal is. I'm sure you've seen this as well. It's like a lot of times, a lot of the delays that are happening in organizations are caused by decisions in, moving forward. And so this idea of alignment can solve that problem.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? It's like the decisions, and it's like we're so hesitant on whether that's the best decision or a good decision or a bad decision. It's like we don't really know until we get started, but when we align toward this goal, and it seems like there's a whole lot more. There's a bigger space there around the alignment that folks are like, well, yeah, I can that goal. Yeah, of course, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I'm on board with that. It's like, great, cool. Why don't we start with that, and then we'll iterate and then see where our decisions are good or bad around. And it seems like folks can get on board with that kind of concept a lot easier, a lot faster.
It is definitely something to start to understand, like the difference between the agreement and alignment and how they're different. It's not like whether you agree or disagree about like moving forward. It's around like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? That's a good place to explore a little bit. What are some ways that you've seen to align people and to bring them to this understanding that agreement is not the same as alignment?
So a lot of times it's providing the space for two or more people to be able to give them a little bit of space to say where they're coming from. I found that it depends on how heated the subject is, right? So this can be a spectrum, but if it's like super, super heated, and I've often found that you need to let folks kind of unload a little bit, for a little while, and then be able on all sides, and then be able to ask just questions about, well, what's important to you? What's important about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish? And I think just being able to ask that kind of question, you start to see things soften. You start to see more head nods. You start to see more, there's a lot of things that I agree. There's a lot more intersection that happens just with answering that kind of question. And then with that, it becomes, okay, so what are the things that we see as larger goals that we can align to? And so that's the hope, is that those intersections become bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it becomes a conversation of, well, where can we start then?
It's interesting. You're bringing the coaching skills back around like this idea of asking questions, listening, being present, witnessing people diverge and converge on ideas. It's funny, we as coaches, or agile coaches specifically, I mean, we always point to this idea of psychological safety and the research that's done by Google around like, okay, giving everyone an equal opportunity to say their piece and express their perspective. But what tends to happen and get teams and groups stuck in general is this idea of, okay, I agree and I'm for and I'm against, and then now we have to make everyone has to come up with their evidence around like why they're for it, why are they against it, and that's not really a good place to start to begin with.
No. And it also pits people up against that they have to leave their particular position and become a different person, as opposed to we can all have our different views and maintain that. And maybe there's some intersection amongst us where we can align to again and be able to be productive and still maintain our individuality even within that effort. And there's beauty in that. There's beauty in the difference and being able to bring differences in and be productive toward a particular goal. I think that's the richness, that's the spice.
That's a great insight. This idea of having a diverse opinion or in perspectives, it adds to the conversation. It doesn't take away. It adds to the conversation. It brings things that we are not really aware of or not familiar with, and that's when novel things come to fruition.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you said that. Yeah, or some time ago, I remember reading this book, The Wisdom of Crowds, and it was based upon that idea. It's like there's real coolness in having disparate ideas and a variety of ideas, and just being able to aggregate them, pull them together, and that you could potentially outperform even experts in a particular thing because you have such a wide range of ideas there, stuff that you would have never conceived about because you have a different perspective, you have a different experience in life, professional or personal, I should say, to bring to bear on a particular problem set. It's cool.
So that leads me to this idea of like, what are some questions that you might ask to invite, people to express? Because, now it's really hard to get people to speak up. And, especially with the virtual, it became in the room, it was, you could still notice people's body language and facial expressions. But now it's a little bit more difficult to see people and know their body language at least, or facial expression, because some choose not to turn on their camera.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So what are some questions that you've been experimenting with or trying to invite the voices of the group?
Yeah. So one of the things I try to do is to start off at the very beginning. This is one of the cool things that ORSC and a lot of other professional coaching programs will say is, design an alliance amongst the group, before you go head in on the particular topic. And, we'll talk about, well, what do we want to do about cameras and who participates and how we participate and what kind of environment do we want to create? And so it gives me a little bit of a flavor of what's going to happen potentially. And so as we go in and the cameras are still off, or maybe there's crickets, I think some of the things that I do is just to make sure that all of the voices are heard or all of the ideas are heard. And it doesn't always mean that every person has to be heard, but just be able to make sure that they hear their idea being expressed. And if they do, then cool. And if they don't, they at least have the space to voice that. And then, there are definitely some times when I get concerned that somebody's really, really quiet. And will point out, I'll say, hey, I'm not sure if we've heard from everybody. So again, just an invitation to say, if we haven't heard from you and you have something to say, feel free to take this spot to say it.
That's a good approach to continue to invite the voices into the conversation, people who haven't said anything, and be patient around okay, the pauses, or giving them an opportunity to say something. And that's another thing, is like another idea or skill that people tend to want to fill the silence and just rush to say something, especially the ones who, we have to understand, like you mentioned in the beginning, is team dynamics or group group dynamics. Some people tend to be more, forthcoming, and they express their views quickly. And some people need to think a little bit before they express their views and come up with find their voice in the, in the group. So asking and continue to invite the voices that are not heard is really important.
Yeah, no question. I mean, sometimes it gets as edgy as being, when the crickets are plentiful and long. Sometimes the engagement becomes, or the question that threw out there is, I noticed there's a lot of silence. What is it like for this team to work in silence like this? Sometimes that triggers something, sometimes it doesn't.
You're reminding me of so I recently went back and I took the ORSC Intelligence, which is the second course in the series. And really that's one of the main theme of the class is how to find that edge and to help the group over the edge. Because like you said, I mean, that tells us something. If the group is silence and no one is saying anything, what is that saying about the group? Like, what is that saying about us working together? I mean, I'm sure there's something is happening or trying to happen, and maybe something is missing.
Yeah. Oh man, you're bringing back really good memories. That was actually, I think out of the classes, that was my favorite, the intelligence one, particularly around the edge theory. And that concept is so awesome. It's like the discomfort or the conflict or the silence, that something's trying to happen. And as a coach, it's trying to help reveal what's happening so that that system, that relationship can explore that and see, well, what do we need to do in order to get to the other side? Or how do we work with this as we go forward? Or is this the way that we are? And let's acknowledge that. And how are we going to be with each other as we work that way?
It is definitely not comfortable. It is very hard because this is a difficult conversation. Just like you said, it could trigger something, and it's telling. And sometimes it's hard. One of the hardest job or things that the coach can do is to just hold up a mirror to the group and to the person, and then they have to make a choice. They have to choose whether they just want to stay the way they are or they want to change, make a move. But without awareness, they don't have a choice. They're stuck.
Yeah, I think that's the wonderful thing about the coaching that allows those kind of conversations to happen in a productive way, and to be able to get to the other side of them if there's willingness to do that, and even explore what the other side looks like. To see, is this cool? Is this a nice other side or not? I think that's the cool thing that the coach can done effectively can bring to the table.
And the other thing is like also the impact on you as a coach. Like what's happening for me right now when I see this? What am I trying to do, or how am I showing up? So that sometimes is missing if you're not aware of what's going on internally as well. Because the group, you will show something to the group and they will show you something back, and then you have to decide what are you going to do with it.
I know I still work with that for myself, right? And constantly checking, rechecking, well, what happened there? And where do I want to take that, at least for me personally, and what I want to do with that as a coach, and how I'm showing up there with that particular client. So that it's just one of those things that this is ongoing work. It is so crazy to me. And then even when I talk to those who are in the program, who were supervisors and leaders and who have been doing this for decades, and they tell me the same thing, which I guess isn't too surprising, but still I still am awestruck when I hear that. And it's very comforting, quite frankly.
And that's something that we talked about in the past as well, and maybe that's a good shift to the idea of self-care, because it's a lot of it is not easy. It's difficult work. You're constantly helping others, and then they also help you change. Like, you're changing each other. That's the relationship, and that could be exhausting. and so you gotta find ways to take care of yourself. And so what have you found as far as like ways to recover and recharge from this type of work?
Wow. Yes, it's all of that is true. And so let me admit before I go down my list of things that I do that this is seriously ongoing work for me. So still trying
Yeah, for you
stuff,
and me
still
both.
trying to be better. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's so I get coaching, every now and then I will pull in a coach to help me. I've done therapy, quite honestly, and that's been incredibly helpful, particularly around the thing of there are times when I can internalize stuff and
Yeah,
that's not good,
yeah,
And so just learning how to deflect to that or
yes,
shift it somewhere else so that it doesn't get internalized. And then, there are certainly, hobbies and trying to stay in shape. Oh, that's been really weird during COVID, really hard during COVID. But yeah, those things tend to help. So I think it's trying to come up with some model for myself personally on what puts me into a really good mental space and then getting into a good cycle so that I'm really intentional about doing those things so that it kind of helps me flush out the stuff that doesn't need to stay,
yeah.
and pull in a whole lot more things that I want to make sure that I'm present when I'm with clients, I'm present when I'm with my family, and I'm present and in a good space even for myself.
That's one of the things that I took away when we last spoke is that okay, I'm not alone in this. I mean, I know we're obsessed with this learning, continuous learning. Finishing this program, jumping into the next program. It's part of just trying to get better. Like as we started this conversation, how do I get better? Maybe what is it that I'm not seeing that I want to be able to see? And yeah, exercise is very has helped me quite a lot. Just a short walk outside
Hmm.
every day, and then connecting with people,
Hmm.
like you and others who are in the community and have started on this path of getting into more of like the different domains and that can support the work that we do. I see you also have started like visual recording, and people won't see that because we were going to be on audio, but you have this nice background of visual recording and graphic facilitation. That's some like coloring. I discovered that coloring and drawing has also been really good in terms of recovering and recharge.
Who would have thunk it, right? Adult coloring
Yeah.
books are just this wonderful thing now. I love it too. Yeah,
It's amazing how just a simple activity can give you like this mental space and the charge you need to just kind of fill you up with energy and continue to come back and deliver work at your best. But yeah, that's something that I have been wanting to learn for a while, but I put on hold because my list is becoming too long. So I can't, I don't have the time or the energy or the money to to be learning all of these things at the same
brother, I'm
time.
right there with you.
Yeah.
The list becomes longer and longer and longer. And I think there's something to double down on with what you said, right? Is reaching out to the community because there's strength in numbers, right? And there's a lot of strength around just a little bit of catharsis every now and then, and
Hmm.
being able, like you said, to connect with other people that share your story, and just like you said, to know that you're not alone out there. And I think another thing that's helped a whole lot, and still, like I said, work in progress, is remembering your purpose,
Hmm.
remembering why you started. So I'm a big comic book fan, and origin stories really get me going. So even as you ask me mine, that it allows you to reflect back on why did I get into this? Why am I doing this? And what am I trying to do? And that gets me juiced up every now and then. And it also helps me to redirect myself on what are the skill sets that I want to do? What are the things that I want to learn? What am I really curious about? Who are the people that I want to connect with? There's a lot of energy that comes with that too, or re-energizing that comes with that. So yeah.
Definitely, this is not something that you could do alone. It's something that definitely needs some community or a support group that you can have a conversation around, like what's happening. And like you said, in a group setting, you let people like unload a little bit or vent a little bit. Just
Yeah.
part of letting out steam and just calming. And it can charge you and help you keep going. That in addition to what you said about the purpose, like remind yourself of what's important about this work. Why are you doing this? And I find it fulfilling to me when I see people starting to move forward, make progress, whether at the team level or individual level, get unstuck and discover, that they're making up a story that isn't true.
Right.
To bring the origin story of like what is like there's a story that they're just making up, and they have been going on that story for a long time, and now having someone to help them or show them that the assumption that they're making can make it clear, and now they have the clarity they need to move forward or take action.
Yeah, you reminded me something that my wife hipped me to. This idea that that's the story I'm telling myself. It may not be true.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I learned that from multiple sources. I think that may have been like the work of Brene Brown, but I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
others have this idea of like, what am I making? I think that's one of the questions that I like. What am I making up about this? I'm making something up, and maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. And the quicker that I realize that it isn't true, the quicker I can get unstuck.
That's a beautiful one, man.
So, I know you've learned the visual facilitation. You've been on the path of professional coaching. You just finished ORSC. I'm not trying to tempt you into signing up for more stuff to do. It's like if there's one thing that you want to continue to learn about, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I should probably consult my long list of things, right? What's the biggest thing right now? Oh gosh, why am I drawing a blank?
You're not writing a book or anything
No.
that we should know about.
No, definitely not. I have tried to pause big things for a little while after having gone through the past year. I mean, certainly the graphic facilitation, that stuff is really fun. It's to an end when I do trainings and working with teams. So getting better with that, getting to the Stuart Young level would be fantastic. But that's probably many years down the road. I think it's probably just honing a little bit more around the coaching. I think there's certainly some skills there that I've picked up that I'd like to get better at. And I think it's integrating more of the agile coaching aspect with the professional coaching. I think that's something that I think over the next year or so that I want to continue honing on, because I think there's something there. I think there's that dance that we talked about. It can be really, really cool. It can look really, really beautiful. And you're talking to a very, very much non-dancer right now in a physical sense. But, there's some beautiful stuff that can happen when that weave happens. And I feel like I have hit it a couple of times, and I'm like, ooh, that felt really good. And I want more of that.
Something that you just reminded me of, like I have been doing in this past year, as just one of, speaking of self-care and recovery, that has really helped me was improv. I did a bunch of improv classes, and I find it fascinating. And this idea of the dance that you're talking about, like you jump in, you don't know what's going to happen, and you just have to roll with it. So it's definitely something that requires a lot of practice, constant practice. It's no matter if you're in the beginning of your coaching journey or like you're a master or certified coach, which is like 2,500 hours worth of practice. We're still learning and getting better, and hopefully that helps other get better as well. So is there anything else that you want to share before we go?
When you do your improv show, let me know. I want to show up. I want to see that. That's going to be awesome. You're right. That is a serious skill. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing is, beyond agility and the professional stuff that we do, I think it'd be wonderful to be able to bring a lot of these skills to social causes. So I think a big thing for me is, just making the world a better place to live in. For all of us. And I think there's a lot of these skills can be brought to those kind of situations. And so that, going back to what you said about the psychological safety and the work that Google did, one of the things that I found, one of the things I lean on a lot, one of the things I thought was really awesome is this concept of speaking human to human. And, it's like, I'd love to see more of that. I'd love to see that, everywhere. So if I can bring more of that to the world, I know I'd be much, much happier. Having conversations like this with you, man, and it's inspiring, it's uplifting. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I am, it's been a pleasure having you. I know you're leading this coach cohort, and you're trying to bring diversity into the coaching and agile space. Where can people go and to find about this type of work? Is there any place that they want to point to?
So definitely find me on LinkedIn, right? And if anybody wants to have a conversation around that, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to have that conversation. Yeah, more diversity in the agile community in the professional world is something I think that we need, because I think we all benefit from that. We all become better, and the little dents that I can provide or help with, I'm happy to do it. So please find me on LinkedIn and reach out.
It's been fun, pleasure having you, and thank you for all the insights, and looking forward to connect with you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for listening. I hope this conversation gave you something to think about or take action on. Remember, take action and get clarity, then repeat.